The late autumn sun slanted low across the neighborhood park, turning the metal chains of the swings into threads of molten gold. Leaves crackled under shoes, somewhere distant, but the sound never reached the girl sitting on the last swing. Emma Sterling, 8 years old, fair-skinned and small for her age, let her feet hang loose above the gravel. She didn't move. She didn't make a sound. Even the breeze seemed to pass around her, careful not to disturb the invisible shell she lived inside. The swing beside hers creaked when the wind pressed it forward and back, an echo without origin, a sound that kept calling for something or someone to answer. Emma didn't. Across the playground, Victoria Sterling stood with her arms wrapped around her blazer as if the expensive fabric could shield her from everything she couldn't control. Her platinum blonde hair was pinned in its usual tight twist. Not a strand dared to fall out of place. Control was the only language she spoke fluently these days. But control meant nothing here, on this uneven ground scattered with forgotten leaves and childhood noise. "Mama?" A small voice called from somewhere behind her. Not Emma's. Not yet. Victoria turned slightly and forced a smile at a toddler tugging at a shoelace. She admired the innocence, the noise, even the tears of other children. Anything loud felt like a blessing now. A handful of mothers glanced at her. Recognition mixed with the quiet unease people often felt around someone who seemed too polished for a place this ordinary. Victoria didn't care. She had come here for Emma. She had always come here for Emma. And still, the girl on the swing stayed silent. A sudden burst of laughter broke the tension of the air. Victoria turned toward the noise. A man, broad-shouldered, calm in posture, wearing a gray hoodie, walked into the park with a boy racing ahead of him. Marcus Thompson carried himself with the ease of someone used to watching before acting. There was something weathered about his presence, not worn down but shaped by things he no longer spoke about. His son, Jake, 6 years old with messy brown hair and boundless energy, barreled toward the sandbox like it was a frontier yet to be claimed. "Dad, there's still dinosaur bones here," Jake announced, dropping to his knees. "They're probably the same ones from yesterday," Marcus said, smiling softly. "But they're still bones," Jake insisted. Marcus crouched beside him for a moment, humor tugging at the corner of his mouth. Then his gaze drifted across the park and landed on Emma. The change was small but undeniable. He paused. His eyes softened, as if he recognized the silence wrapped around her, as if he'd known it once. Victoria noticed. She had trained her whole life to read micro-expressions. In boardrooms, in negotiations, in the face of competition. But this one caught her off guard. It wasn't pity. It wasn't curiosity. It was awareness. She blinked, unsure why that unnerved her. Jake, dusting sand from his hands, followed his father's gaze. He squinted at the still figure on the swing. "Why doesn't she play?" he asked. Marcus answered gently. "Maybe she's thinking." That was not quite the truth, and somehow the boy knew it. Jake jumped up, energized by the idea of a mystery. "I'll ask her." "Jake," Marcus warned lightly, "go slow." The boy nodded, but his version of slow was still a jog. He approached Emma with all the enthusiasm of a comet entering orbit. When he stopped in front of her, he grinned. "Hi," he said. Emma didn't look at him. Her eyes followed the dust motes floating in the golden light, as if they were safer company. Jake tilted his head. "Do you like space? You look like someone who likes space." Still nothing. Victoria took a step forward, but Marcus gently lifted a hand from across the playground. Not stopping her, just offering the chance to wait, to let the moment unfold. "Sometimes she doesn't talk," Victoria called softly. Jake turned. "That's okay. I talk enough for both of us." A surprised breath escaped Victoria before she could swallow. Emma's fingers tightened slightly around the metal chain of the swing, a movement so small only a mother or someone like Marcus would notice. Jake pointed toward the sky, which glowed in streaks of amber and peach. "That one looks like Jupiter." he said. Or maybe a potato. Hard to tell. A beat passed. Emma's gaze shifted. Barely. Slowly. Toward the direction of his pointing finger. Jake gasped as if she'd spoken a full sentence. You do like space, he declared triumphantly. Marcus approached now, calm footsteps on gravel. Hey, he said quietly to Emma, nodding once as if greeting a fellow traveler rather than a child. Jake gets excited about planets. He thinks everything looks like Jupiter. It does, Jake insisted. Emma blinked. Tiny response. But a response. Victoria felt her chest tighten. Fear, hope, the familiar ache of wanting too much too quickly. Marcus crouched beside the swing, careful to leave a respectful distance. He didn't speak again. He simply existed there, present but not pressing. The air between them shifted, mellowing like warm metal. The echo of the empty swing creaked softly, silence answering silence. When Emma finally looked at Marcus, fully looked, something subtle flickered in her eyes. Recognition, curiosity, maybe just the faintest drop of safety. It was impossible to name, but unmistakable. Jake leaned closer, whispering loudly enough for the whole playground to hear. She's like a silent astronaut, he said with awe. Floating but not lost. Emma's grip on the swing chain loosened. Her lips parted the slightest bit, as if the words she'd buried for years stirred beneath them. The moment held, suspended like the breath of dusk. Victoria felt her pulse rise. Marcus's eyes widened almost imperceptibly. Even the wind paused, but the sound never came. Instead, Emma lowered her gaze again, pulled her feet inward, and let the swing sway just an inch. Jake didn't seem disappointed. He simply smiled, unbothered by the silence. I like astronauts, he said. They see things other people miss. It was then, at the soft collision of those words, that the hook of the entire story quietly anchored itself. Jake turned, cupped his hands around his mouth, and called to the playground with absolute conviction. She's a silent astronaut. The title floated across the golden air, echoing in a place where echoes weren't supposed to exist. And Emma, for the first time in a long while, didn't flinch. The week that followed moved like a quiet reel of film, stitched together by soft light and small mercies. Every afternoon, the park became the center of their little solar system, a world held together by the gentle gravity of four people orbiting cautiously around one another. The days grew cooler. Leaves drifted across the pavement in slow spirals, crunching beneath shoes. The sky shifted earlier into shades of honey and rose. And through all of it, Emma Sterling walked a fragile line between remaining hidden and stepping, inch by inch, toward the world. It began with proximity. On Monday, she sat on the swing while Jake dug for imaginary fossils only a few feet away. She didn't join him, but her body angled toward the sound of his laughter, like a plant bending toward weak winter sun. On Tuesday, she stood rather than sat, her hands clasped behind her back as she watched Jake attempt to climb the monkey bars with the confidence of someone who had not yet learned what gravity could do. By Wednesday, she took 2 careful steps after a fallen maple leaf Jake pointed out. Tiny steps, but undeniably chosen. Each change was small, enough to miss unless someone was watching closely. Marcus and Victoria were watching closely. You've been here every day this week, Marcus said gently one afternoon as they stood near the fence, separated from the swings by a few yards of yellowed grass. So have you, Victoria replied. He shrugged, hands in his hoodie pockets. Jake likes coming here. Emma needs it. Their eyes met for a moment, an exchange soft and fleeting, like a candle flame stirred by breath. Neither of them tried to name what they saw there. Naming things too early had its own kind of danger. Jake ran past them, arms stretched wide. Emma, come see my volcano. It's erupting again. Emma stood near the slide, her face half lit by the late golden hour. She did not move toward him, but she also didn't retreat. That alone made Victoria's chest loosen enough to draw a deeper breath. Marcus watched the girl too. She's observant, he said. Some kids speak with their eyes first. Victoria's voice wavered. Without her permission. I would take eyes, hands, anything. She stopped, the confession too raw. Marcus nodded, not prying. Kids choose when they feel safe. Safe. A word Victoria hadn't allowed herself to hope for in a long time. Emma turned then, slowly, tentatively, and looked toward the two of them. Not a full look, not even a full second, but long enough for Victoria to feel something shift beneath her skin. Unsafe had been their normal. This was the first step toward undoing it. Jake's laughter broke the moment. He had discovered a fallen branch and decided it was now a magic wand capable of making dinosaurs, storms, and sandwiches depending on the spell. He waved it enthusiastically, shouting nonsense incantations. Emma blinked at him once, twice. Then she walked 3 steps closer. Victoria nearly gasped. Jake, oblivious to the weight of the moment, pointed at the ground where a faded red rubber ball sat abandoned near the tree line. Emma, look, planet. It's Mars. He picked it up and held it out to her, his hands sticky with dirt. Emma stared at the ball like it was alive. Jake grinned. Wanna hold Mars? Emma didn't reach for it, but she didn't turn away. Another step forward. A breath that seemed too brave for a girl who had been silent for most of her life. Victoria pressed a hand against her chest, grounding herself. She dared not move, afraid the smallest shift would cause the moment to crumble. Marcus spoke softly from beside her. This is good. She's engaging. The sunlight shifted as a breeze moved through the park, making the ball glow warm orange in Jake's hands. He bounced it lightly, and the thump echoed softly across the space between them. Echo. Emma's eyes widened at the sound. Not fear, but familiarity. Something in that simple rhythm touched a place she hadn't opened in years. Jake bounced it again. Thump. Again. Thump. Emma inhaled sharply. Victoria held her breath. Jake extended the ball once more. Emma, Mars wants you to hold it. It was the kind of line only a child could deliver with such earnest faith. Emma's fingers trembled at her sides. Her lips parted, a small click of breath escaping. Then she reached out. Her hand hovered above the ball. For a moment, the world tightened around that tiny, hovering gesture. The breeze paused. The leaves stilled. Even the shadows leaned in. When she finally wrapped her fingers around the rubber surface, something broke. Not in her, around her. The silence she carried cracked like thin frost. Beneath a careful step, Jake whispered, "You did it." The ball slipped slightly, bouncing against her palm. Emma drew in another breath, deeper this time, and then her mouth moved. One word. Fragile. Barely air. Barely sound. A tiny fracture in 8 years of unbroken quiet. Ball. Victoria's knees nearly gave out. Marcus exhaled so sharply he coughed once. He looked at Victoria. Not shocked, not triumphant, but stunned with reverence, as if he'd just witnessed a miracle he didn't dare claim. But Victoria felt the entire weight of the moment slam into her chest. Her eyes burned before she realized she was crying. Emma said it again, softer, like testing the edges of her newfound courage. Ball. Jake threw his head back and cheered. She said it. She said it. Mom. Dad. Everyone. She said it. No one else was in the park. But it didn't matter. The feeling spread, warm and electric. Emma held the ball tightly now, grounding herself with its texture. She lifted her eyes, first to Jake, then to her mother, and finally to Marcus. The look she gave him wasn't gratitude or trust. It was something simpler but more profound. Recognition. As if she knew he saw her. Not the silence, not the condition, not the worry, her. Marcus swallowed hard. Victoria saw the flicker in his eyes, that quiet thing that lived beneath his calm exterior. She didn't know what it was yet, but she knew, undeniably, that something had just shifted between them. A door that had been sealed shut for years, Emma's, hers, perhaps even Marcus's, had opened. Just a fraction. Just enough for light to slip through. And when Victoria looked at Marcus again, really looked, she suddenly felt the dangerous, hopeful thought rising inside her. This man might be the one thing in her daughter's world she had never been able to be. The community center looked nothing like the gleaming therapy offices Victoria had taken Emma to over the years. No polished floors. No curated children's art printed from Pinterest and framed like clinical encouragement. No soft-voiced therapists with carefully moderated smiles. Instead, the center was a small, sun-worn building tucked between a laundromat and a corner deli. Its front windows were fogged slightly from years of weather. The sign out front buzzed faintly, one letter flickering as the afternoon sun began its slow descent. But the moment they stepped inside, something warm brushed against them. A blend of dust motes floating in golden light, the soft echo of a basketball bouncing in a far room, and voices that sounded real, human, imperfect, felt oddly alive. Victoria hesitated in the doorway, clutching Emma's small hand. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" she whispered. Emma didn't answer. She rarely did in moments like this. But she didn't cling or step backward. She simply looked around, her eyes wide and cautious. An explorer mapping new territory. That was enough. Marcus waved from a room down the hall. "Over here." Jake darted out behind him, hair wild and grin wider than the doorway. "Emma, we saved you a spot. Come on." Emma stiffened. But Jake didn't run at her this time. He slowed, remembering Marcus's words, and simply held out his hand as though offering an invitation rather than a demand. To everyone's surprise, Emma followed. The room they entered was modest. Scuffed floors, faded paint, a couple of old mats stacked in the corner, and a handful of kids chatting softly. But the light, oh, the light, poured through the high windows in thick golden beams that made everything look washed. In late afternoon warmth, it painted the air in the color of belonging before the feeling even arrived. Marcus placed a bin of soft foam balls in the center of the room. "Okay, everyone," he said gently. "Today we play a passing game. No pressure. Just hands, eyes, and fun. Ready?" Jake immediately raised his hand. "I'm ready." A little girl named Amy raised hers next. Though timidly, Emma did not. Instead, she lingered near Victoria. Marcus approached her slowly. Not too close, not too loud, but present. "Hey Emma," he said softly. "You can stay with your mom or sit by Jake. Your choice." Choice. The word landed delicately, like a feather. Emma looked from Marcus to Jake to her mother, then down at her shoes. Victoria knelt beside her. "You don't have to speak," she whispered. "Just be here." Emma blinked once. Then, astonishingly, she stepped toward Jake. Jake lit up like a lantern. "Sit next to me." She did. Marcus smiled. Not triumphantly, but with deep respect for the courage behind such a small movement. "Okay," he said. "Let's pass the ball." He tossed a soft yellow ball to Jake, who caught it with exaggerated ceremony. "I am the best catcher in the world," he announced. Amy giggled. Jake passed the ball gently to Emma. It bounced once against her palms before settling there. Emma stared at it. A familiar roundness, a safe texture, a thing she had already braved in the park. "Good," Marcus said quietly. "You can pass it when you're ready." She lifted her hands and pushed the ball forward. Not quite a throw, more like a release. It rolled across the floor to Marcus. "Perfect," he said. Victoria exhaled, the tension slipping from her shoulders. It was nothing more than a child rolling a ball, but for Emma it was monumental. The game continued. Jake's dramatic throws, Amy's shy laughter, the soft thump of foam meeting ground, the rhythm of children learning to share space. And through it all, Emma stayed. She didn't retreat to a corner. She didn't freeze. She didn't cover her ears or hide her face. She simply stayed, quietly participating, absorbing the room the way dry soil absorbs its first rain. When the ball rolled to her again, something changed. Marcus crouched to her level, meeting her eyes without forcing contact. "If you want," he murmured. You can say where you want the ball to go, or you can point. Either is okay. Emma clutched the ball. Her small fingers pressed into the foam. Her lips parted slightly, then closed again. Take your time, Marcus added. The room softened around her. The golden light, the bouncing echo of another ball, Jake's quiet hum of encouragement. Emma inhaled. Then, so faintly it almost dissolved into the warm air. She whispered, "Here." Marcus froze. Not visibly, but internally, the moment hit him like a tremor. Victoria's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes flooding with disbelief. "Here," Marcus repeated gently, touching his chest. "You want to pass to me?" Emma nodded. Jake whispered. She talked again. She did. And the second whisper was clearer, as though testing the strength of her voice. "Here." She rolled the ball straight toward Marcus. Marcus caught it with both hands and did something he rarely did in front of a group. His eyes shone just for a second. "Great passing," he said softly, his voice cracking. "Thank you, Emma." The rest of the session unfolded with the ease of early healing. Emma didn't speak again, but she didn't need to. She followed cues. She made choices. She belonged to the room in ways she never had anywhere else. After class ended, the children wandered toward the water fountain.
Victoria pulled Marcus aside.
"That word," she whispered. "Do you know how long it's been since she—" "Years," Marcus guessed gently.
Victoria nodded.
Marcus looked down, thumb brushing the side of the ball in his hand. "Emma's doing the hard work. Not me." "You helped her." He didn't deny it. Instead, his expression shifted. Something cautious, something unspoken. "Kids like Emma, they remind me of someone I knew. My sister."
Victoria blinked.
Surprised. "Your sister." Marcus didn't elaborate. Not yet. But the shadow that crossed his eyes said enough. Before she could ask more, a soft tug brushed Marcus's sleeve. "Emma." She hadn't meant to. Her hand was barely there, fingers brushing the fabric like a whisper of trust. Her gaze hovered somewhere near his shoes. Marcus froze, breath caught somewhere between wonder and fear of breaking. The moment, Victoria saw it, the connection forming in real time, fragile as thin glass yet undeniably real. Emma withdrew her hand quickly, almost as if she hadn't realized she'd reached out at all. But the imprint of that touch lingered. A silent promise. A deeper opening. A sign that this man had become something she felt safe anchoring to. Victoria watched them, pulse steadying, heart shifting in a way that terrified her, because she knew she was looking at a door opening, one she had never been able to open herself. The following Tuesday, the golden warmth of the community center was replaced by the sterile blue-white glow of Victoria's office. Glass walls, stainless steel trim, the faint hum of a server room. Behind her, success had always sounded like this, quiet, controlled, expensive. But today it sounded like failure. Her assistant stood at the door, tablet in hand. The investors moved the call up. They want projections by noon.
Victoria inhaled sharply.
She was supposed to pick up Emma in 20 minutes, walk her to the community center, and sit on the bleachers while she played. Tuesday and Thursday afternoons were sacred now.
Non negotiable.
But the numbers on her screen pulsed urgently. If she didn't join the call, a year's worth of work could collapse. "I'll call the nanny," she said, already reaching for her phone. Her voice was too steady, too practiced. She called again Thursday. She told herself it was temporary, necessary, justified. But by Friday, Emma's light, the little spark they had fought weeks to kindle, went out with devastating speed. At school, the hallways felt colder. Emma walked with her shoulders folded inward, backpack hanging low, steps almost silent. Her teacher, Mrs. Patterson, greeted her softly. "Good morning, Emma." Emma didn't raise her head. By mid-morning, she was sitting at her desk, hands in her lap, eyes fixed on the window instead of the reading assignment. When it came time for group participation, she froze entirely. Two children whispered. A boy tapped his pencil impatiently. "She never talks. Maybe she doesn't know the answer." She knew. She always knew. But knowing had nothing to do with speaking. At lunchtime, Emma ate alone again, her progress with Jake and the community center seeming like a dream slipping through her fingers. When her apple rolled off the table and onto another child's shoe, all she could do was stare at it, paralyzed by the simple demand of retrieving it. The boy sighed and tossed it into the trash. Emma didn't react. She felt herself sinking back into the familiar quiet, the cocoon that kept her safe. By afternoon, she was barely more than a shadow. The crisis hit during a group presentation. Mrs. Patterson wanted to give Emma a small part, pointing at pictures on the board, no speech required. A gentle step forward. "Come on up, sweetheart," the teacher said carefully. Emma stood, legs trembling. The class stared, eyes like spotlights, breath shallow, distance echoing. She took one step, another, then something broke. Emma turned and ran. She slipped into the hallway, down past the lockers, past the stairwell, until she reached the girls' bathroom. She pushed inside, found the last stall and locked the door. Her breath came fast, ragged. The familiar ringing rose in her ears. Her hands shook uncontrollably. Footsteps echoed outside. "Emma? Sweetheart." Mrs. Patterson's voice hovered just beyond the door. Emma pressed her forehead to her knees. I won't, she whispered, as if she were breaking some vow she had carved into her bones. The stall remained locked, the world outside blurred. Victoria rushed to the school the second the call came in. She ran down the hallway, heels clicking like frantic punctuation. Her blazer flared. Behind her, all sharp lines and cold professionalism. So wrong for this place, this moment. Mrs. Patterson met her halfway. "She's in the restroom." She had a panic response. Victoria felt her stomach drop. I wasn't there this week. I sent the nanny. I shouldn't have. Right now," the teacher interrupted gently. "She just needs you." Victoria pushed open the restroom door. The fluorescent lights were harsh, unforgiving. Water dripped from a faucet with rhythmic insistence. "Emma?" she called softly. Silence. Then a faint whisper, cracked and terrified. "I won't speak." "Won't." Victoria pressed her hand to the stall door. "Sweetheart, you're not in trouble." I can't. Emma's breath hitched. "I won't." Hearing her daughter's voice used like a shield, like an apology, like a punishment, tore something deep inside Victoria. She closed her eyes. And for a moment another door opened. Not in the school, but in her memory. Flashback. Years earlier. The kitchen was dark except for the glow of the refrigerator light. Her then-husband stood with his back to her, shoulders heavy under the weight of words he hadn't spoken yet. "You missed another dinner," he finally said. Victoria tightened her grip on the car keys in her hand. "There was a launch. I told you. You tell me every week." His voice cracked. "Every promise turns into another excuse. That isn't fair." "No," he said quietly. "It isn't. But neither is being married to someone who's always somewhere else." The argument that followed wasn't loud. It was worse, quiet, exhausted, inevitable. The kind that ends marriages not through betrayal, but erosion. When he finally walked out, suitcase in hand, Victoria sank onto the cold tile floor. She whispered, "I'm trying." But trying hadn't been enough. And she had sworn, deep in that heartbreak, that she would never let work take someone she loved away again. Yet here she was, losing Emma in real time. Victoria pressed her forehead to the cool metal of the stall. "Emma, I'm here. I'm not leaving." Silence. Just the sound of her daughter's choked breath. Victoria swallowed the rising guilt, the ache, the self-loathing. "I'm sorry I wasn't there this week," she whispered. "I'm so sorry. You didn't do anything wrong." A heartbeat, then two. Emma whimpered softly, the stall door trembling. From her shaking, Victoria continued, "I promise you, I will not disappear again. You matter more than anything I do." A faint sniffle came from inside. Victoria's voice cracked as she whispered, Please let me in. The lock didn't turn. But on the other side of the door, she heard Emma curl tighter into herself and repeat through tears, I won't speak. I won't. The words were a plea, a confession, a shield she wasn't ready to lower again. Victoria felt her own strength fracture. She needed help. Someone Emma trusted deeply, someone who could reach into the panic she herself had caused. Her hand moved frantically to her phone. She dialed one number. Marcus answered on the first ring. His voice steady, grounded.
Victoria?
What's wrong? Victoria swallowed the sob rising in her throat. It's Emma, she said. She's locked in the school bathroom. She won't come out. She keeps saying she won't speak. A long, still moment on the other end. Then Marcus said, Bring her to the park. Jake and I will be there. His tone left no room for doubt, no room for fear, only direction.
Victoria exhaled shakily.
She looked at the stall again, at the small shadow, trembling behind the door. Emma, she whispered, I'm taking you somewhere safe. The park was nearly empty when Victoria arrived, Emma clinging to her side like a fragile shadow. The late afternoon light burned soft and orange, spilling across the playground in long ribbons. Leaves rustled quietly overhead. A foam ball rolled lazily in the breeze, tapping against a bench as if impatient for what was about to happen. Marcus was already there. Jake stood beside him, unusually still. His hands fidgeted with the hem of his t-shirt, nervous energy contained only by instruction. When they saw Victoria, Marcus stepped forward with the steady determination of a firefighter approaching a burning doorway. He knelt to Emma's level without hesitation. Hey, astronaut, he said softly. We missed you. Emma didn't lift her face from Victoria's coat. Victoria's voice cracked. She had a panic episode at school. She's been saying she won't speak. Marcus nodded with a slow exhale, then gently held out the foam ball. The same kind they used. At the community center, one Emma had passed with tentative courage just days before. We're going to play the game again, he said. Just like before. No rules. No talking required. Jake stepped forward cautiously. Emma, I saved your seat. Emma trembled. But this time she didn't run. Marcus gestured toward the open patch of grass. Let's start easy. The three of them formed a loose triangle. The sun lowered, turning everything gold and warm. The wind brushed Emma's hair as she stared at the ball Marcus held. This ball isn't magic, he said gently. But it does something special. It waits. He rolled it toward her. It reached her shoe and tapped against it, soft, patient. Emma stared at it, frozen between fear and memory. Jake crouched nearby. You can just touch it, he whispered. Emma lifted her foot, then slowly, so slowly, nudged the ball forward. It rolled crookedly toward Jake. Jake let out a breath of pure relief. She played. He shouted to no one in particular. Marcus didn't celebrate. He understood how fragile the moment was. Instead, he said, Good pass, Emma. They continued the ritual. Marcus rolled. Emma nudged. Jake caught. The rhythm built. Not speech, not conversation, but something older and more primal. A heartbeat shared across 3 children and 2 adults. Emma's body loosened. Her chin lifted half in. Her hands uncurling from fists. Marcus watched the small movements, reading them like a second language. When the ball returned to him, he paused. Emma, he murmured. You know, when I was your age, someone close to me didn't talk much either. Victoria looked up sharply. This was new, something he hadn't told her before. My sister, Marcus continued. Her name was Lily. She was a watcher, like you. Emma's eyes twitched with interest. She talked sometimes, he said quietly, in whispers, only when she felt safe, which wasn't very often. The wind stilled, as though listening. Jake said nothing.
Victoria verli breathe.
Marcus looked directly at Emma. Adults wanted to fix her. They pushed and pressed, and every time they did, she went quieter. He swallowed hard. One day, after a really bad week, she stopped talking completely. Emma blinked. She didn't have a Jake, Marcus murmured. Or a mom like yours. Or a place like our class. And I didn't know how to help her back then. His voice tightened, but he kept going. She died when she was 9. A soft gasp slipped from Victoria. She covered her mouth. Emma's small shoulders lifted, tiny quiver. This, Marcus said, holding up the foam ball, is my second chance. Not to fix you because you're not broken, but to give you what she never had. For a long, fragile moment, nobody moved. Then, a whisper of breath. Emma stepped forward. Just one step, but it was enough to pull the entire scene taut with possibility. Marcus lowered the ball to her hands. You don't have to speak, he said softly. Not unless you want to. Emma's fingers closed around the foam. Her eyes flickered between Marcus and Jake and her mother. The wind picked up, brushing through the leaves like distant applause. And then, clearer than any sound she'd made before, but still soft with fear cracking open. I want to play again. The words trembled. Confession, a request, a rebirth. Victoria burst into tears. Not sobs, but the kind of tears that fall silently, pulled by gravity and relief. Jake jumped. She talked. She talked again. But Marcus didn't move. He didn't celebrate outwardly. He lowered himself to her eye level, letting the weight of her courage land gently. Then we'll play, he said. And they did. For 40 minutes, Emma rolled and caught and passed the ball with small, whispered words guiding her movements. Here, mine, Jake, again. Each word cracked the air like tiny stars bursting. When the sun finally dipped behind the trees and the shadows lengthened, Jake tugged Victoria's sleeve. Can we get pizza? Marcus looked at Emma. What do you think? What kind? Emma hesitated. This was the test. The next step. Speaking not inside a game but in the world, to Marcus with intention. Her throat bobbed. She whispered once, then louder. Cheese, please. The wind seemed to pause, as if even the air had been waiting. Marcus smiled. Jake cheered. Victoria pressed a shaking hand to her heart. In that moment, the world expanded again. Fragile, luminous, possible. The week after the park breakthrough unfurled like a slow, gentle sunrise. Not sudden, not dramatic, but warm, widening, inevitable. Emma spoke more. Not to everyone, not yet, but to the people she trusted. To Jake in whispers. To Marcus with shy glances stitched to quiet words. To Victoria, later in the evenings, in sentences fragile but whole. The healing came in small pieces, like bright paper cranes folding themselves into shape. The community center transformed first. Emma walked inside without clinging to Victoria's hand. She didn't hide behind her mother's coat. She drifted toward Jake and sat next to him on the mat, as if she had always belonged there. Jake grinned. Emma, I saved you the blue mat. The other one squeaks. Emma's lips curled. Almost a smile. Blue is good, she murmured. Victoria froze in the doorway. Jake didn't. See? I told you she talks now, he announced proudly. Marcus pretended not to be surprised. He was good at containing big emotions for small children. But his jaw tightened, his eyes softening with gratitude toward the girl who had fought so hard for every sound. The activity of the day was a rhythm circle. Stomping, clapping, passing a beat around the room like a pulse. When it reached Emma, she hesitated only briefly before tapping her palms together. Softly, but with intention. The group caught the rhythm. Without pause, Jake leaned toward her and whispered, Cool beats. Emma whispered back, Yours are loud. Jake beamed. Marcus's entire body exhaled. This was healing, not a miracle but a mosaic. But healing, Victoria soon learned, wasn't seamless for everyone, especially not for Jake. One afternoon, when the kids ran toward the swings, Marcus stayed behind to toss empty cups in the
Recycling bin.
Jake tugged his shirt, expression tight, eyes downcast. Dad. Yeah, buddy? Jake hesitated, rare for him. His usual river of words shrank to a thin thread. Do you like Emma? More than me now? Marcus froze. Jake's lips trembled. She's special. Like she needs you more. And she talks to you now. You smile different when you look at her. Marcus sank down to be a level. Jake, he said gently. Nobody could ever replace you. But, Jake sniffed. She sits next to you. She holds the ball how you like. And she wants you to come to the park. And you say her name soft. Different. Marcus inhaled carefully. He hadn't expected this. He should have. He put his hands on Jake's shoulders. Listen to me. Emma doesn't make me love you less. Helping her doesn't take anything away from you. Jake stared at the ground. Feels like it. It feels like sharing, Marcus corrected. And sharing is hard, I know, but my heart doesn't divide. It gets bigger. Jake didn't respond. So Marcus added the part he had forgotten to say all these days. You were the first person to help Emma talk. She followed you, trusted you. She's brave because you are. Jake blinked. Because of me? Yes, Marcus said. She found her voice because you didn't give up on her. The fear in Jake's expression cracked open, letting hope shine through. Really? Really? Marcus murmured. Jake broke into a smile. Small, shy, relieved. Okay. But I still get to sit on your lap first. Marcus laughed. Deal. The moment everything came together happened at the playground 2 days later. The sun blazed clean and bright in a clear blue sky. Shadows of children stretched across the grass. Laughter rose in bursts like birds taking flight. Emma climbed the jungle gym. Slowly, deliberately, testing each rung with quiet confidence. Victoria watched with her heart in her throat. But this time, she did not hover. She trusted Emma's balance, trusted the progress, trusted the air around her daughter to hold. At the top, Emma turned. Wind caught her hair, turning it into a golden banner. Look at me, she shouted. The words rang out sharp, bright, alive. I'm flying. Jake gasped dramatically. Whoa, she beat my high score. Victoria pressed a hand to her mouth, tears springing instantly. Not of fear, of awe, of witnessing a child choose the world. Emma slid down the long slide, the sunlight flickering across her face in fast, glowing stripes. She landed lightly and ran, not walked but ran, straight to Marcus. Did you see? She asked breathlessly. Marcus knelt, hands steady on her shoulders. I saw everything. You were incredible. Emma beamed. Jake barreled into them, wrapping an arm around her. You flew like a superhero. She giggled, soundful, unrestrained. Victoria watched from a short distance, her heart raw and wide open. She had spent 8 years praying for a moment like this. And here it was. Later, when they all sat under the shade of a maple tree, the children examined the shapes the sunlight made between the leaves. Jake insisted the dapples were secret codes. Emma whispered guesses. Victoria and Marcus sat close, not touching, but near enough that warmth passed between them in invisible brushstrokes. Emma eventually climbed into Victoria's lap, but then, not long after, she shifted, stood, and walked to Marcus. She placed her small arms around his neck. A full embrace. No hesitación. No fear. Marcus froze, breath caught. Slowly, carefully, he returned the hug. Emma whispered something into his shoulder, too soft for Victoria to hear. Jake leaned in. What did she say? Emma stepped back. Her eyes, clear, steady, hopeful, lifted to Marcus's. Then she asked, with a courage that made time slow, Will you be my dad too? The world around them seemed to still. The light, the leaves, the laughter in the distance. Even the breeze hesitated. Victoria's breath caught. Marcus's eyes widened, stunned. Not by the question, but by the weight of trust behind it. Emma waited, small hands clasped, chest rising in tiny, uncertain breaths. By late summer, the small garden behind the community center had transformed into something close to holy. It wasn't meant to host weddings. The space was just a rectangle of grass, too young. maples, and a swing set that creaked like an old violin string when the wind passed through. But when Victoria stepped onto the path in her simple cream dress, holding a bouquet that Jake and Emma had clumsily arranged with wildflowers, it felt like the most sacred aisle in the world. Golden hour wrapped everything in a warm hush, turning the sky into melted honey. Jake fidgeted with the sleeves of his new blazer. Emma stood beside him, her shoes too shiny for her liking, twisting one foot into the grass as if grounding herself in this moment. Marcus waited under the maple tree, hands trembling slightly, not from fear but from the magnitude of choosing and being chosen. There were only a handful of guests. The community center volunteers, Victoria's sister, Jake's teacher, and 3 neighborhood kids who insisted weddings needed official witnesses. It was quiet, intimate, imperfect, and therefore perfect. When Victoria reached Marcus, he whispered, "You look like the first warm day after a long winter." She laughed softly. "And you look like someone who still can't believe any of this is real." "I can't," he admitted. The officiant began. "No dramatic bows, no towering speeches. Just 2 people promising the simple, difficult things. Kindness, steadiness, truth." Marcus's voice cracked when he said support, and Victoria brushed away a tear when she said home. Then it was Emma's turn. She stepped forward, holding a small note card, her handwriting uneven, letters drifting upward as if they wanted to fly. She took a breath. "I want to say thank you," she began, voice trembling like a tiny bell. "To Marcus, because you helped me talk again. And to Jake, who never got tired of waiting for me to say something. And to Mom, because you never stopped trying to hear me even when I didn't have words." The guests shifted, some wiping their cheeks. Jake sniffled loud enough for everyone to hear. Emma continued, "I used to be scared of playgrounds. I used to think swings were too high. But now they feel like the way the sky holds you." Victoria covered her mouth as tears spilled over. Marcus bent slightly, whispering, "You're doing wonderfully, sweetheart." Emma nodded, braver now. "And I want us to be a family. All of us." The wind rustled the leaves as if applauding. She stepped back, cheeks flushed, eyes shining. After the ceremony, people drifted toward tables covered with homemade food. Nothing fancy, just dishes made with love. Laughter mingled with the sound of cutlery and the faint metallic whisper of the swing chains rocking in the breeze. Emma tugged Marcus's hand. "Can we go to the swings?" Marcus glanced at Victoria, who smiled. "Go. She's been waiting for this." They crossed the grass, Jake trailing behind with a cupcake in each hand. The swings glowed gold in the lowering sun. Emma climbed onto one, fingers curling around the warm metal chains. The seat lifted slightly under her small weight. "Push me?" she asked. Marcus placed his hands gently on her back, giving a soft nudge. The swing rose. Emma leaned forward into the wind. Higher, higher. Each arc backward let out a soft creak. A tiny echo of the day she'd whispered, "Look at me. I'm flying." The memory glimmered in the air, layered with this new moment of ease, of belonging. Jake plopped onto the swing beside her, muffin crumbs catching in his hair. "Bet I go higher." Emma laughed. "Bet you fall first." Marcus stood between them, pushing one child and steadying the other, a rhythm he had learned with the patience of a man who understood both loss and second chances. Victoria watched from a distance, the sight softening something deep inside her. She walked toward them slowly, letting the scene soak into her bones. The new family she had stitched together with hope, grief, courage, and 1,000 tiny choices. She stood beside Marcus, their shoulders brushing. "Think they'll ever stop?" "No," he smiled. "And I hope they never do." Victoria exhaled, quiet but full. "Sometimes I wonder, what happens next, when life isn't crisis or repair, when it's just living?" Marcus turned to her, voice low. "Then we build something worth living in." She nodded. The future used to terrify her, a long corridor of uncertainties. Now it looked softer, like sunlight on water. She stepped closer. "I'm glad it's you," she whispered. I'm glad it's us. He didn't say anything, just threaded his fingers through hers. As dusk deepened, the children jumped off their swings and ran toward the cake. Emma stopped halfway, turning back as if sensing the moment had one last important breath left to take. She walked to Marcus, then to Victoria, then to Jake. She took each of their hands, one, then the next, then the last, forming a small circle in the middle of the garden where the last light pooled like liquid gold. Emma looked up at them, eyes wide, steady, certain. Home, she said. One word. A universe. Marcus tightened his grip, breath-catching. Victoria closed her eyes as tears slipped down her cheeks. Jake leaned into Emma's shoulder, cupcake forgotten, and the swing chains whispered behind them. A soft echo, like the memory of fear turning into the promise of something endlessly warm.